Hello, dear learners. I am Dr. Shaumili Mandal, and I am back with my eighth module, that is, eighth week, which is Cultural Heritage and Cultural Assimilation. In my previous modules, I have talked about, history of folklore, poetry tradition, narrative genres, folk performances. In my last one, I talked about the myths. And in this one, I'll be talking about the artifacts and material culture. In this, I have again prepared five lectures, and the first lecture will be Culture and its Marker. Second one, Folk Artifacts of East and Northeast India. Third one, folk artifacts of North India. Fourth, folk artifacts of Central and West India. And the fifth one, folk artifacts of South India. So now I'll be starting with my first lecture, Culture and its Marker. The tangible, handcrafted, and tradition based items made and utilized by common people are typically outside of institutional, industrial, or elite systems, which are referred as folk material culture. These consists of clothes and fabrics, utensils and tools, furniture and housing, ritual or religious artifacts, musical instrument and toys. These items are not only useful, but they also have symbolic meaning and are frequently closely related to social structure, identity, rituals, and the seasons. So, we have crafts. Any item having artistic or utilitarian functions that is handmade and has been passed down by tradition come under crafts. This is different from art and an occupation. It has immense aesthetic appeal and requires workmanship. Any object that gives some pleasure and also serves some practical, social, or economic purpose can be called folk art. It should be noted here that if the pleasure giving function predominates, then the artifact is called art. And if a practical function predominates, it is called craft. The main purpose is aesthetic appeal. This object can be more popular and will not be subject to rapidly changing fashions. Next, we have folk architecture. This can be said to be traditional architecture. It is concerned with all traditional aspects of building, the shapes, sizes, and its layouts, such as barns and shades, the material used and the tools and techniques of building, the sites chosen and the placement of the various buildings, the uses and functionality of such buildings. We have folk costumes. The dress of all traditional, ethnic, occupational, and the sectarian groups is determined geographically and expresses the region or the locality which comes under its category. This can also be different for different sects and religions. For example, the Muslim ladies wear parda and the Sardars a turban. We have folk cookery, which can be defined as traditional domestic cookery marked by regional variation. It is the opposite of commercial and institutional cookery. This includes the study of food themselves, their composition, their preparation, their preservation, social and psychological functions. It also includes attitudes, taboos, and food habits. Early culture's material culture was directly influenced by their immediate requirements, local resources, and environment. Stone, wood, bone, or clay were used to make tools. With the materials at hand, grass, reeds, mud, and snow, a shelter was constructed. Fur was worn in cold locations and linen in warm ones, depending on the task and the weather. Material culture is currently functional, but ritual and symbolic meaning are soon added. We have the customs and the crafts, which I discussed. Communities created and inherited styles and specialized crafts over time. Regionally specific motifs emerge in metals, weaving, ceramics, and carving. Artisans appeared as proficient peasant practitioners rather than as elites. items turned into identification markers. The design is part of a tribe, village, or family. The aesthetic, spiritual, and narrative functions of commonplace items are cemented throughout this stage. We have the interaction and the intercultural impact. The conquest, migration, and trade introduced new resources and influences. Folk tools and attire were altered with the advent of cotton, glass, dyes, and metals. Blended designs and techniques include the incorporation of European themes by Andean weavers or the absorption of Islamic geometric patterns by the African fabrics. In many rural places, traditional forms were maintained in spite of modern materials, frequently defying outside change. Hybridity or the adaptation of ancient form to new inputs characterizes this stage. While mass production spurred inventiveness, it also posed a challenge to folk material culture. Factory made furniture, clothing, and tools took the place of handcrafted ones. Folk artists suffered financial setbacks, yet, folk aesthetics gained popularity and sentimentality. By creating guilds or folk art associations, several communities purposely preserved their traditions. The era gave rise to revival movements, people actively collecting, preserving, and even reinventing traditional forms. A new understanding of folk material culture as heritage has emerged in the 20th century and in the present century in response to urbanization, globalization, and cultural conformity. Traditional crafts are preserved and displayed by museums, cultural festivals, and folklore institutes. Folk materials such as bunads in Norway and embroidery in Ukraine are utilized to create a sense of national identity. Folk traditions are reinterpreted by young people and artists in modern design, fashion, and environmentally concerned lifestyles. Intentionally and cultural pride characterize this stage as folk culture transforms into eco consciousness, personal identity, and symbolic resistance. In today's material culture, folk knowledge is frequently incorporated into sustainable design, which includes zero waste textiles and traditional agriculture. Folk artifacts are both preserved and commercialized by the tourism and heritage sectors. Using contemporary materials, do it yourself, and makers, culture bring back traditional craft methods. Folk artifacts are now used in identity politics, international art markets, and cultural diplomacy. The material culture of the folk, what is the importance of the folk material culture? Why are we so concerned about this folk material culture? Because it maintains identity and memory, provides information about local sustainable solutions, symbolizes flexibility and resiliency, encourages storytelling, art, and design, and keeps individuals rooted in their heritage while navigating modernity. Next, I'll talk about the various classifications of folk material culture. Classifying folk material culture involves categorizing the tangible, handmade, and often traditional objects created and used by a community. These items reflect the everyday life, values, skills, and environment of the people who make and use them. The common categories of folk material culture are the domestic and household items. For example, handmade furniture, woven baskets, pottery, cooking tools, quilts, wooden utensils. And what are they used for? In everyday life, for cooking, storage, and comfort. We have the clothing and adornment, which are hand woven fabrics, traditional costumes, embroidery, jewelry, and moccasins, among others. And what are their purpose? They reflect identity, status, occasion, and cultural affiliation. We have architecture, which consists of log cabins, adobe houses, houses, barns, and smokehouses. And what are the purpose of them? Sheltering humans and animals, often adapted to local climates and materials. We have the tools and implements, which are hand forged tools, plows, fishing nets, spinning wheels, knives, etc. And what are their purpose? They are used for work and survival. For example, farming, fishing, hunting, and domestic chores. We also have transportation, horse drawn vehicles, sledges, canoes, snowshoes, etc. And what are their purpose? They are adapted to local terrains and climates for practical movement of people and goods. We also have the art and decorative crafts. For example, folk carvings, painted furniture, toolware, beadwork, tin art, and others. And what are their purpose? They are aesthetic and symbolic expression, often tied to local stores or religion. We have the ritual and religious objects. For example, handcarved crosses, masks, altars, and ceremonial attires. And why are they used? They are used in religious or spiritual ceremonies, often with symbolic meaning. We have toys and recreational items too. They are handcrafted dolls, wooden toys, musical instruments like fiddles or jaw harps, and they are used for entertainment and cultural learning for children and adults. We have containers and storage. We will see wooden storage container, wooden baskets, clay jars, and everything. And what are they used for? For practical storage, often reflecting local materials and technique. Now, we are going to talk about the culinary artifacts. The term folk culinary artifacts describes both material and immaterial objects, customs, methods, and ways of doing things related to foodways. And what are foodways? The cultural, social, and economic ways of making and eating food that have their roots in folk culture or the customs of a particular community or group, and they typically passed down orally and through lived experience rather than formal education. They can be divided into stories, rituals, recipes, and tangible items. We have the traditional, frequently handcrafted food preparation equipment that showcase the environment and resourceful of its maker. We have, in the folk culinary artifacts, we have earthenware cooking pans or clay pots, stone or wood carved mortar and pestle. We have grain mills, butter churns, and other baskets of woven material. We have ladles, utensils, and spoons made of wood. We have tandoors, we have open fire setups, or we have cooking stoves. These tools are often specific to a region's climate, agriculture, and cuisine. You can see I have attached a photo of a cuisine which is also a part of culinary artifact. For instance, a comal in Mexico is essential for making tortillas, while a karai in South Asia is used for deep frying and curries. Recipes and techniques are examples of intangible artifacts. They are the recipes and culinary techniques that have been handed down through the generations and are still in use today. The oral recipes that are learned through practice are never recorded. We have techniques of preserving food, such as pickling, drying, or fermentation. We have meals based on the harvest calendar or seasonal culinary technique. We have regional marinades, cooking methods, and spice combinations. These preserve the flavor of a tradition, such as a family's own garam masala blend or a sourdough starter handed down through the centuries. Stories or beliefs about food can also be considered culinary artifacts. Folk tales that describe how a food or ingredient came to be. We have ideas that, eating garlic wards off evil spirits. Food here is used as a metaphor in proverbs and idioms too. These embed cultural values and social norms into everyday life. In a world that is becoming more interconnected, they protect identity. Given a glimpse into how people celebrate live, and endure their culture. They teach sustainability, zero waste, and seasonality, which are the foundation of many practices. They are included in the intangible cultural heritage that UNESCO and other organizations acknowledge. Rituals involving the preparation and consumption of food contain these artifacts, preparing special foods for special occasions. We have funerals, we have marriages, we have birth ceremonies, we have ceremonies like, the threading ceremony, moon cakes for the mid autumn in the world. We have several of them. In folk culture, food rarely serves as a nourishment. It has symbolical meanings which are connected to the community, the season, and the sacred. Next, I'll be talking about the clothing. Folk attire, sometimes referred to as ethnic costume or traditional clothes, is a rich manifestation of historical continuity, social values, and cultural identity. It consists of clothings, accessories, fabrics, and decorations that are exclusive to a particular community, frequently handed down through the years and strongly associated with customs, professions, settings, and religious beliefs. The unique traditional attire worn by a cultural or ethnic group is referred to as folklore, and it frequently reflects the social roles, the status, gender, and age, the tribal or regional identity, the class or occupation, the ceremonies or rituals, the climate, and the materials, frequently produced by hand. And these gestures include distinctive designs, shapes, colors, and techniques rooted in traditional wisdom. The fabrics and the materials which are normally used are made of natural colors and dyes, and they are wool, cotton, bark cloth, hemp or linen, and the silk. The process of making the cloth, including weaving, dyeing, and stitching, is an art, in itself. The methods and decorations, in addition to being practical, folk attire is also beautiful and symbolic. We have the work, embroidery work, which is very famous if we see in South Asia and particularly in India, which is symbolic or narrative. We have the metalwork and beading, which is normally the Maasai art in Africa. We have the patchwork, quilting, and applique, and the natural dyeing methods such as turmeric and indigo. Both artistry and worldview, which is seen beautiful, sacred, or protective, they are reflected in the techniques. Folk attire, interestingly, are also, very varied. We have sarongs and wraps, which is prevalent in South and Southeast Asia, Africa. We have kaftans and tunics from the Middle East and North Africa. We have the badges, aprons, and skirts in the Alpines. We have the regionally distinct style of kimonos, dashikis, hanboks, and robes. Wide sleeves for ceremonial dances and belts for the labor preparedness are two examples of how the design frequently reflects gender roles, climate, and for practical necessities. They finish the ensemble and they have deeper significance. Headdresses includes veils, caps, floral crowns, and turbans. We have jewelry, which includes amulets and symbolic pendants. We have the shoes, which are woven sandals, wooden clogs, and moccasins, which are very famous. We have sashes and belts, frequently embroidered locally. In many cultures, a person's accessories reveal more about them than their actual attire, including their area, marital status, and their cultural status. We have folk masks, which are very important and you can say pertinent, in especially the dances we have, the folk dances we have. They are sometimes, used ceremonially, sometimes religiosity, and sometimes for other reason. But folk mask is very important. And what are they and how are they made? They are handcrafted face coverings used in traditional folk rituals, festivals, theatrical performances, and celebrations. They are often made from local materials and are tied to myth, religion, seasonal cycles, and social identity. They function, as a bridge between the human and the spiritual, the real and the symbolic. For spiritual and ritual use, masks are worn for funerals, fertility rites, rites of passage, and seasonal transition. They are also frequently employed to call forth or take on the form of ancestors, spirits, or gods. Even the storytelling in folk theatre and dance, masks are essential for portraying gods, animals, devils, or characters. Myths, folklore, or moral stories are frequently recounted in these performances. During festivals, masks allow people to speak taboo truths, parody authority, or reverse societal roles. Peasants frequently pose as aristocrats or elegy in carnival customs. Folk masks, as I said, they are mostly handmade and they are made from locally sourced materials. For example, wood, leather, cloth, paper mache, clay, or gold. Animal materials, horns, feathers, fur, bones are also used. Their texture and finish often reflect the nature of the character. Smooth and bright for benevolent beings, rough and grotesque for malevolent spirits. Folk masks are even, rich in meaning. Animal masks can represent fertility, strength, or cunning spirits. Demon or spirit masks can be worn for provocation as well as protection. Occasionally, by making themselves even more terrifying, they drive away evil. Masks or heroes, sorry, of heroes or ancestors serve as containers for holy characters. It is safe to criticize authority figures, gender norms, or societal injustice while wearing grotesque or satirical masks. Wearing a mask is also considered sacred in many cultures, as the performer is seen to change into the thing they represent. Folk mask customs are carried on with a contemporary twist by carnival and masquerades, such as Mardi Gras and the Venice Carnival. As a form of anonymous resistance, masks have entered political protest, mirroring the ancient folk tradition of mask wearing to challenge authority. Artists and designs are reinterpreting folk masks in contemporary art, fashion, and performance. In pre industrial societies, folk costumes also play a very important role. They are known also as national dress, ethnic dress, or traditional attire. Evolved as a result of combination of environment, means the geography and the climate, the economy, the symbolism, the religion, the marriage status, gender roles, the local identity, and others. They usually include a variety of highly symbolic clothing, accessories, headgear, and shoes. And what do? They signify regional distinctiveness. Every village or region might have its own recognizable spirit and twist. Colors, embroidery motifs, fabric choices, or how a headscarf is tied. For example, in Romania, different regions like Maramure's or Oltenia have distinct blouses with signature embroidery patterns and colors. We have the originally designed for daily life. Costumes reflect weather conditions, occupations, and mobility needs. Woolen layers in cold areas, and utility belts and aprons for workers or peasants. Symbolism in patterns and colors we have. Embroidery and often the other color carry coded messages. Red for the vitality and also for protection, white purity, black dignity, maturity, floral or geometric motifs, fertility, protection, and the natural cycles. These aren't decorative accidents, they are often intentional, symbolic storytelling on clothes. The gender and the status indicators are also marked by folk costumes. They visually distinguish men from women, and single from married, young from old, and sometimes even rich from poor. In some alpine regions, married women wear certain colored hats or aprons, while young unmarried girls might wear floral crowns. Next, I'm going to talk about the painting and the sculpture. Folk sculptures and paintings offer intriguing glimpse into the social, cultural, and spiritual life of the people who make them. Folk art is usually created by self-taught artists. That's the important thing, the most important actually, that they are self-taught. They do not have such training, the formal training. And they utilize traditional methods, locally available materials, and frequently passed down skills, in contrast to academic or fine art. It has strong roots in narrative, individual expression, and communal ideas. The features of the folk paintings, they are produced by common people rather than artists, as I said, with formal training. They use stylized figures and strong, frequently flat hues. They show everyday life, religious themes, folk tales, or local events. Materials frequently consist of cloth, wood panels, or walls, the murals actually. They are rich in local meaning and obviously they are symbolic. We have the Madhubani, an Indian folk art form that uses natural dyes to create geometric, complicated designs. We also have the Worli, which are paintings on mud walls in a tribal style with simple shapes. And we also have, sculptures carved from regional resources like metal, clay, stone, or wood. They are usually symbolic or utilitarian and have a protective, religious, or a narrative function. There are numerous pieces which are nameless but have been handed down through centuries. So, what are the various types we have? We have the carved wood saints, animals, figures, and totems in the regions of Africa, in the Nordics, and the Appalachia. We have the chain carvings and everything. We have the wooden saints or Mexican santos, which are used on altars at home. They are the ritual and religious sculptures. We have the African tribal leader, who are frequently employed in ceremonies to represent ancestors or spirits. The voodoo sculptures from Haiti are crafted from discarded items, rich in spiritual meaning. The voodoo dolls we have, the environmental, they also teach folk material culture, also teaches sustainability. Bottle trees, carved scarecrows, and installations made of discarded materials are examples of works that are frequently whimsical or narrative in nature. They express individuality and also the regional customs, occasionally sarcastic or political. One of the most abundant and illuminating manifestations of material culture is folk architecture. It's not, just about the buildings, but how people use handcrafted structures with locally sourced material and traditional building methods to live, adapt, and express their cultural identities. They are vernacular in nature. Folk architecture is made by common people rather than licensed architects and is greatly impacted by geography, climate, function, and tradition. We have, for example, the cabins, huts, and cottages, the outbuildings of folk architecture. Chapels and shrines are examples of religious structures. Meeting houses and log houses are examples of communal buildings. Folk architecture bears more than just survival. They are connected to an individual's identity and origins, the tradition, the information, and the adaptation. They have no fashion actually, but they are created, maintained, and developed via collective efforts. We have the stones in the rocky regions, the adobe or mud brick in arid areas, and we have the thatch or grass roofs in many tropical or rural European cultures. For example, the ice and snow. They also have practicality, which is a very important aspect, which is a very important actually. aspect of folk material culture and folk architecture, the practicality. The buildings are adapted to environment and use. The high roofs are for hot climates, sloped roofs for snowy areas, and earth sheltered homes in extreme climates. We have the igloos, right? If you have seen how they are made of ice and how they protect the people living there, the Eskimos. They are built by hand, often by the family or local craftsmen without formal plans. The tools are basic and the techniques are learned from watching. They also have cultural meaning, and ornamentation might reflect spiritual beliefs, protection symbols, or regional identity. The front door, caves, or beams may be painted or carved with symbolic motifs. Now, we are at the end of our first lecture of this module, that's the eighth module. And in my further lectures of this module, I'll be focusing on folk costumes from areas in India and also the other things which I've mentioned here in a brief and a detailed manner. Thank you.